Okay, guys. So my girls were mad at me. Not mad at me, but thought that I endorsed Donald Trump and that somehow I was supporting him and all sorts of stuff. Really, I thought it was interesting what he was going to bring to the political arena, and I did some research on him and how he would speak. And knowing how the demographics for politics at the moment is, I knew he would go far and he would rattle feathers. And this was me researching the establishment, and I found out that a lot of things that were theoretical were true. And that they have absolutely no idea how the modern world works, especially the younger voters. I'm talking from 19 all the way up to 30, 35, and with more emphasis on digitalization of communication even at government levels. It's gone from 35 all the way to 70, let's say 75 below, and so forth. That might sound surprising, but it's kind of what's going on. And these aren't people who are tech savvy, like programmers who did that and that in the old days and so forth. So everybody is advancing, and as they're advancing, things like researching your candidate are pretty easy. You go on YouTube, you look at a few clips, you look at some propaganda videos, or you look at some documentaries about conspiracies and so forth. All of that stuff is out. So with all of those conspiracy documentaries, like the ones Obama had, where he was the anti-Christ and he had this plan to kill people and put them in caskets, and the older propaganda of the Bush family, the world domination, and Illuminati and all of that stuff. And that sort of stuff comes from the lack of information from federal governments, because when you don't give people facts that sort of thwart conspiracy, then the conspiracy grows and people start doubting their own governments, their own leaders, and it makes it harder for leaders to lead, to keep people safe and so forth. The Snowden incident is one of them. He thought he was being an internet hero by doing what he did, as opposed to going through the organization, asking the questions, and having it go to the highest level, so it's a problem that can be solved. How do we bring this to the people, or how do we justify this? Because it's not as most people think, that they are literally spying on you. Because I don't want to sound rude, but not all of you are as important as you think you are. I guess there are some important people who are monitored for security purposes and to keep them safe and so forth, but that's not everybody. So not everybody is the president, right? So forgetting the national security aspect, I want to talk about a president. There was a man, I won't say names. There was a man who, he was good at noticing leaders and taking them to the top. And he met a gentleman who just had the look. He looked very presidential. He was like 6'3", 6'4", somewhere there. He had the sort of broad shoulders, and he just looked very presidential. But he had a peanut in his head, in that he had the presidential look, but he didn't have the progressive mind to lead. And eventually this man got him to be president. And when he was president, he is deemed as the worst American president ever. I'm talking, this is way back. I'm not sure exactly. I'm thinking it's in the 60s, 70s, somewhere there. And this brings us to why this election is different. Most people thought Barack Obama is going to be the black president, yada yada yada. No, a smart man was going to be president. You should look at his resume first, not his skin color. You should look at his demeanor, his characteristic, his charisma. Right? Under pressure, what does he do? When he's mocked, how does he react? Can he take on a mob that's against him? Yes, he can. And he's from Chicago. This is this is what you face. I mean, if you're standing up against the establishment in Chicago, you have to be at the front. I mean, let's look at black activists and what happens to them. I don't want to name names, but you all know him. He has the really big afro, and most of the time he gets arrested when he protests, and he doesn't mind going to jail because he knows he went there for a reason. And that is leadership, right? I'm not saying everybody should go to jail, but as lawyers, we always have a sense of making sure things are legal. So when you're approached by authority or something, they need a really good reason for them to break the law and arrest you, or so forth. Had this experience. 50,000 people led them right, and they decided to go for they decided to listen to the midget who's supposedly very educated, the mouse they call him, who kept complaining about the elephant, and I was just trying to help the fool. Now that he's helped, now he's all stinking giants. But he's part of the movement. He's growing. His eyes are opening. He had a lot of people manipulating him. It's kind of the same with Delish. I mean, right now I'm always Delish. Why is Delish? Because to be honest, I admire her. Not just because she's a woman, but because of what she has accomplished. Me knowing how the industry is, how everybody wants to come and eat off you, and how so many liars and con artists and so forth are all around you, and she survived as far as she could. And to me, that's an accomplishment. I have a lot of respect for her. She could be a marketing magnet if people realize that is what she has accomplished, but instead people are like, she sits around and they don't understand. And heck, I was willing to go to her house, live in her garage, and help her forward with whatever she's willing to do, because I saw that much potential. But it is what it is at the moment. But that's just an example of how you get people that don't want the talent within their within their circle to thrive to the point where they don't lift you up because they want to be at the top. And going back to the president, I'm sorry I went off topic for a while. Going back to that president who was the worst president, Obama changed everything. He bought brains, he bought charisma. He was able to bring young people into politics. He was able to bring young celebrities into politics, and everybody said, yes, we can. This was something that was unprecedented, right? And it marked to me the sort of new era of presidential candidates on their way to the White House. Now, what Trump has done is he's taken the reality show concept and the salesman context, and he tried to politicize that until eventually he couldn't keep up the facade, because your actual knowledge in politics and leadership starts to show, and that's where he scrambled, right? And he scrambled there, but here comes something that I can't control, and I don't want to control, right? This is the Republican Party has disappointed me because they are an American party. The bigotry, the bias, the underlying racism within the party. They say, no, we speak of Obama like this not because he's black, that should go. It is. It's subconscious. From calling him a Muslim to saying, well, because his father came from Kenya, he was born in Kenya and he shouldn't be eligible, and so forth. These people forget that most of them are German, French, Spanish, and so forth. They're not American. They're American European. That's why I detest the whole African American thing. African American how? If you look at most African Americans, you'll realize most of them have white ancestors. Fact. America is this bowl of mixture where somehow color which has developed this culture of separation. For example, the first slaves that went from Africa to America, the first slaves, they went there and they helped to build forts and so forth, and they were paid and they were hard workers, right? But then came a moment where the people that are already there, as we are seeing today with the Muslims must go, the Mexican border must be closed. What happened? What happened was the people who went to colonize America, who were there longer, decided they're taking our jobs. But it actually, let me correct myself, it started with we're not being paid enough for the work that we do. So they came together along with the black people, right, who by this time could speak English. They came together along with the black people and they were like, we should stand up to the workers. These were one of the founding unions, and they were dangerous to the people that were in charge, because capitalism had just started to evolve, and most of the leaders were still part UK, part American, right? So some of them would go home and they have died at home and then come back. Some were French. Most people think that it's just the British, but there were lots of French who went to America. Europe rushed. All of the poor peasants in Europe rushed. America was built primarily by peasants and beggars. So how do you control these people who've decided, there's a lot that we can actually do for ourselves? You say, well, those black people are taking your jobs. And as they said those people are taking your jobs, they made the black people the scapegoat. And then they took the Bible and started to indoctrinate the people. like. We believe that these people are less than us. They didn't come to Africa and then think monkeys. No. They came to trade, they respected our leaders and so forth. But that was the start of the segregation. So since a lot of private companies had already taken charge of the spices and a lot of the land, and they found all sorts of minerals, what could the government do? They decided, you know what, the only thing left for us are people. And then they started to take the people by force, because they realized something: you can actually buy criminals. And this is what most people don't know. In the beginning, it wasn't just African kings giving away their strongest workers, or no, they were giving away the criminals. They actually had courts. The king had advisors. When you do wrong, you are a criminal, you become outcast in the community. The prison system didn't exist in Africa, so you were punished with labor and all sorts of hardships in order to make up for what you have done. Now this culture, due to colonization, changed to the point where you could do wrong and just pay. Now that payment came from the bartering system, which came from Europe. Europe was bartering in order to get things, so they adapted that principle. But that's not how it was. So they decided, what's the best thing to do with criminals? Sell them off as slaves. And they did sell them off as slaves. And since they were considered criminals by the African kings, they were worthless to the, not just Americans, the Europeans and the Americas. And they became slaves on the plantations. But the more they needed, the more they had to pressure those kings by giving them ultimatums. And these are part of the things in history that are kept out. It's like, do you really it's giving a king an ultimatum. Would you rather we kill everybody, or would you sacrifice some? And this is where one of my greatest rulers said no. Shaka Zulu. He said no. That part of history I will always celebrate. Not just him, Kanjimi, king of the Kwangali, Kavango. When the Portuguese tried to invade, he said, Vambunza, Sambio, Mbuku, all of you, rise up to the rightful king and assist me to kick out this squanch. The Portuguese were decimated. Kavango has never been colonized. All they've done is make deals, ask for land. Can we build our little thingy here? That's why there's a red line. It meant beyond this red line, especially at the Kavango area, you treat those people with dignity. When there was war in Angola, Savimbi came to speak to the late king. The one I said was the last real king. Savimbi depended on him. That meant he looked up to the king. And Savimbi was allied with Swapo. Swapo had to bend the knee to him in order for Savimbi to help Swapo. Ask yourself, and you will realize why there has been this propaganda of second largest tribe and all of that rhetoric, and trying to get in with the fake chief that's there at the moment, when some of us have it running through our veins from 2 of the most powerful clans in the region, and I've proved it enough. What I am saying is that I am walking on real African history based on archaeology, which is important, right? And especially based on social sciences, to how they lived, what was their environment, and so forth, to find out the real story that can be told, because it's important. Because this story does encapsulate everyone. And going back to the to the President Obama, why he changed everything, it's because he rattled the world like no other president before him. Never. There has never been one single president in American history who had people cheer when he was elected as the winner. Never. And that's why this election is important, because the ladies are on my case. Are you supporting Donald Trump? And it was entertaining, but I have to set it out for you. At the moment, he has the backing of the Republican establishment. As much as they try to hide it, as much as they say this and that, they love him because they think the kids love him. But let me remind them of something. Just last year, when he announced that he was going to be president, and I put it there and I was like, wow, this is cool and so forth, a lot of teenagers started a petition and they said they want to vote by the age of 16, because they did not want to vote for the orange man. You guys can research it and find out. A lot of kids want to be politically relevant because it's their future after all. And the only candidate that speaks of the future of children is Hillary Clinton. And they are the most important. And that's why I said it before. I support Hillary Clinton because I've seen her mistakes. I know why she's made her mistakes. And I've seen how she's learned from them. And I see where she's going. She's not going to be the first female president anymore. No, she's going to be the first human rights president. Men, women, gay men, lesbian women, transgendered men, transgendered women, people with disability, immigrants, migrants. It really is going back to America's values. And if you want America to backtrack because of oil, and oil at the moment is what's pushing the Republican Party to say all the things they say, and to even stoop so low as to support Donald Trump. Because oil, and he's admitted it, he's a messenger right now. They're the ones saying, say this. And I still like Ivanka. I think she's good people, but this is serious. And your father is not ready. He's not ready to be the president of the United States of the moment, especially not now, especially not with the fact of what has just been achieved in Syria. It might seem like a small milestone, but just go back 2 years ago, it's huge. Syrian kids, Syrian mothers, fathers finally have hope, that glimmer of hope that they just didn't have. and it is going to be enforced. Playing possum on people's lives and their futures, it will mean these kids will grow up vengeful. They'll grow up disturbed, traumatized, angry. Who will they point their anger to? Killing kids, displacing kids. I just want to say Assad isn't safe. If Assad wants to rule because he wants to protect himself, he should ask for amnesty. I said the UN is corrupt because they haven't said a thing about Assad, a war criminal who used biological weapons against his own people, a man who made over 1 million people run away scared out of their own country. I have pants that were made in Syria, and now today, what do they make in Syria? This man is the personification of evil. Evil. He might as well be there taking guns and shooting kids in the head. And everybody is too scared and mum to speak against it. I'm one of the people that looked at Putin, apart from this false glorification that they gave him, and I thought he will bring change to Russia. But to see him shake with a man with bloody hands, it's disgusting. That's not the way Russia is going to go forward. The only way Russia is going to go forward is to re-establish ties with allies, not competitors. And everybody wants to work with Russia because of the people's sake. The people want to. There was a time I spent over 3 years looking into Russia, especially the displaced kids in Russia, the ones that live at dump sites, the ones who feel they have no future, the border that really called prison. I know this stuff. I'm not new to this. No. The refugee crisis is Russia's fault because they won't take accountability of Assad, and that means everybody has the right to go against Russia, including Iran. If Iran wants to better its future in oil and everything else, don't deal with Russia so long as they have their hands dirty. I know a bluff when I see one, saying, oh well, we'll do this and we'll watch this. I'm no idiot. I know war. I know more about war than you. How many books have you read about war? How do you look at war? Do you know the history of Russia since the 1800s? I keep stressing that I don't want to be politicized. We don't want to be politicized. We want to close this chapter. And if you want to be in the way, so be it. Don't worry. No one's going to throw bombs at you. But your people will know you're the reason they are not developing. You're the reason they are hungry and cold. You're the reason Germany doesn't want to trade with you anymore. You're the reason that the EU doesn't want to trade with you anymore. You're the reason why more sanctions are coming. You're the reason why Iran will look the other way. You're the reason why oil will keep dropping and dropping, and more countries will not want to buy oil from you. You're the reason why even China is going to wash their hands off of you. So make the right choice.